And so this is our launching into an understanding of what it means to be a human in the world. At the outset, the scriptures are really clear to us that it's not good for us to be alone. And in fact, research is catching up with this. There's a study in 2015 that came out, and one of their conclusions was that lacking social connection is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of mortality risk. Right? So if you have a lot of friends, feel free to smoke. That's not the point. That's not the point, right? We know that smoking is an unhealthy practice, right? But one of the things that we're coming to understand now is that lacking social connection is the equivalent damage being done to your mortality probability. Like your likelihood of dying is comparable if you're lacking social connection as if you were smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I would suggest to you today that even though we're hyper-connected, that our social connection is actually decreased in the last 15 years. Right? So we have the illusion of connection without the health, life-giving benefits. And again, I just want to commend you guys for taking the time to come out here and eat some delicious pancakes. Did anyone get the pineapple this morning, by the way? That was amazing pineapple. Yeah, so good. So I want to commend you for taking the time to create not just a relationship with God, but to foster your social connection here with each other. Okay, so what I want to do now is to just kind of like launch into some stories and glean some principles on relationship and social connection from the scriptures and then from experience in general, okay? Now, this is an AI-generated image. I thought this one was actually pretty good. I haven't checked to make sure that everyone has the appropriate amount of fingers, but it looks, I think we're good. I think we're good. And this is a scene from, this will be like one of those like magazines or games for kids where you like look at the picture and find out what's wrong. So just keep staring at it and tell me when you find something that's messed up. Like, does someone have, oh, you know that? That's weird. That's weird. He does have a backwards hand. AI strikes again. AI strikes again. Okay, this wasn't as good as the AI Noah wearing his North Face jacket. So this is a picture of David and Jonathan, and you remember the story of David. He was only a boy named David, and he had a little sling, and he went and he slew a giant named Goliath, and he was quickly gained huge notoriety in Israel, and he gained notoriety particularly in the family of King Saul. Saul was the first king of Israel, who was an incredibly handsome man, the scriptures tell us. And Saul had a really valiant and noble son named Jonathan, who had already won great military victories before David even came on the scene. But when David gains prominence as the one who slays Goliath, the text is fascinating in how it describes David and Jonathan's interactions. So after David, this is after David has killed Goliath and become a champion in Israel. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. Now, the Hebrew idea of love isn't just that you have fond feelings towards someone, but the idea of love in Hebrew and Hebrew in general is this way. The language is very action-oriented. So the idea of loving is the idea of a disposition to do good to someone, right? So Jonathan determines that he's going to do good to David. And it says that from that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. And then notice what he does here. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Now, this isn't like the kind of friendship advice that I would say to you is directly applicable here at camp meeting, right? Like if you introduce yourself to someone and think like, hey, we should be friends. Here's my jacket, my iPhone, and my watch. Here's my shoes. Like, you will not make friends that way. Can we agree on that? Oh man, we really needed this. I gotta save you from relationship catastrophe, right? Like, this is where the speed dating went wrong. Someone gave away their jacket on the first 20 seconds. No, what's fascinating here is that David has already been anointed to be the next king of Israel, but in terms of the way the culture works, the next king of Israel should be Jonathan. And there's actually nothing about Jonathan in his character that would disqualify him for being king. Like, he would be a better king than his father Saul was. But when Jonathan becomes aware that David is going to be king, and David has gained all this great notoriety, even though Jonathan himself is someone that has notoriety because of his military greatness and his valiant character, Jonathan isn't threatened by David. And what you have in this act, actually, when he takes off his tunic and he takes off his sword, his bow, and his belt, what's happening there, the historians and the commentators, they tell us that what's happening in this act, in this simple verse, is that Jonathan is relinquishing his right to be the king, and he's conferring it on David. Isn't that incredible? Right? So Samuel had already anointed David to be king, but Jonathan's the one that would be slated to be king, and for the rest of his depressed life, Jonathan's father is going to pursue a track to try to make his son king. And yet Jonathan, the one who has the most to lose from David becoming the king, Jonathan, in fact, willingly abdicates any right he has on the throne, and then for the rest of Jonathan's life, he pursues the track of ensuring David's greatness. That's incredible. It's incredible. So the first thing I want to just pull out of this for us as we're talking about unshakable relationships is that when we're looking for friends and when we're showing ourselves to be friends, the kind of people we want to be are the kind that celebrate when others succeed rather than looking on with jealousy. Right? One of the things that the Lord has given me the opportunity to do is to communicate to people the gospel, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. But one of the things I've noticed in the sphere of people that publicly share the gospel is that it's really easy for a competitive spirit to arise. And it seems like so counterintuitive that people that are trying to share the name of Jesus would feel tension. But that often is the case. And one of the things that I so appreciate about the leadership here is that there's just this intense sense of collegiality, and there's no territoriality. It's like I have just felt supported, and I am so impressed with the leadership here. I think God is using them in a powerful way. But those are the kind of people that you want to be friends with, right? They're the ones that are celebrating, not looking on and saying, oh, you could have done this, X, Y, Z. In fact, we have an expert in the study of the Trinity in this room, and we were talking the other day, and I said something, I had some unclear language about the Trinity that people that are experts in the Trinity would look on me and say, the way you said that is actually an ancient heresy. And the person that I was talking with, he was so gracious about it and supportive of me, even though he knows better than me about that subject. I thought that's the kind of person you want to be around. You want to be someone that is celebrating when others succeed. Okay, I want to go into the next story here. Another AI image here. I'm so curious now to see where the flaw is here. I don't see anything. You just let me know. We'll leave it up there for a minute. There's a guy by the name of Saul, and he's a persecutor of the believers in Jesus, what was called the Way. And then you know the story. He has a dramatic encounter with the risen Christ, and his whole life is rearranged, and he begins now to go around publicly and proclaim that Jesus is actually the fulfillment of the Jewish scriptures, right? Now, this is sort of like, I don't know if you guys, depending on your age, this would resonate with you differently, but there was a time in American history relatively recently where the most hated individual was Osama bin Laden. Does anyone remember that? Yeah? Okay, that's part of your mental framework. So it would sort of be like if in the United States, someone said, hey, Osama bin Laden has actually applied for U.S. citizenship, and he wants to be part of our country now. And everyone in America would feel like this is just a ploy, right? They would have felt like this is just some trick so that he can gain access. This isn't sincere. And so when Saul is going around now, and he had been locking people up and consenting to people being killed because they were followers of Jesus, and then, like he would show up here and he'd say, "Are you a follower of Jesus?" And he'd say yes, and he'd say, "Okay, off to prison." Right? So he's doing that, and then understandably, when he now starts going to places and he's saying Jesus is the fulfillment of all that we've hoped for, people are understandably skeptical. And so we have this fascinating experience that when Saul arrived in Jerusalem, he tried to meet with the believers, but they were all afraid of him. They did not believe he had truly become a believer. Now, is that understandable? I think it's understandable that they were skeptical about his conversion. Doesn't mean it was right, but it's understandable. But then something happened. Then Barnabas brought him to the apostles and told them how Saul had seen the Lord on the way to Damascus and how the Lord had spoken to Saul. He also told them that Saul had preached boldly in the name of Jesus in Damascus. So this takes us to another principle that I think is hugely important when we're talking about having meaningful relationships, romantic and then just as friends. You want to be the kind of person that's making introductions that invite people to have a role in the space, right? I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this, if you're not married. If you've ever asked yourself this question, I used to ask myself this question when I was in my 20s, I wasn't married, and I was thinking I wonder if I have already met the person I will marry. Did you ever wonder that? And then sometimes I would think that, and then I'd be like, I hope I haven't met them yet, right? Because I don't think I could think of someone that I know already that I would want to marry. One of the things that is interesting is often for romantic relationships and then also for hiring people for employment purposes, often the people that you will marry or the people that you will hire to work for you or that will hire you to work for them, often those people aren't people that you already know, but they're also often not people that are complete strangers. There's this sweet spot where, can you help me and just hold this microphone? Because, yeah, if you just hold this microphone in front of my face, I want to be able to use my hands for a second. Is that okay? Okay. So imagine this is your sphere of friends, the people you know, and then this is the person that you're going to marry, their sphere of friends. You guys often don't have the same sphere, but there's usually an overlap, right? So my wife and I joke that the reason why we got married is because it was an arranged marriage. And it's it sounds crazy, but what ended up happening was I was pastoring in a town where there were about 3 young adults between the ages of 20 and 35. I was one of them. And all 3 of us were boys. So there weren't a whole lot of options of people that I would marry. And I was pastoring away there in that community. And then a bunch of people moved in that were young people, and they were running a discipleship school called Arise. And so I spent time with them. We got acquainted. And one of them that was connected with Arise had a sister that when she graduated from Walla Walla, she moved into that same area in with her sister and was kind of using that as home base in order to make, to apply for jobs and that kind of thing. And actually, the first time we met, honey, you should just say hi. You're not breastfeeding again. We should just, yeah. So this is a true story. The first time that my wife and I met, it was under these circumstances. Honey, do you want to come tell the story? That'd be fun. I'll watch our kid for a minute, and you can say what happened. You look so Northwestern right now. You look like you're from Portland. Okay, here you go. You should be fly fishing.
So when we first met, the first time we actually met, I think that, I don't know if I had heard about you before then or not. We had a lot of mutual friends that were rooting for us to get together. Anyway, it was at GYC. Yeah, it was at GYC, and it was some friends that I had known from when I went to Arise, and they had 2 kids who were maybe 4 and 6 at the time that were standing there with them, and when they saw me, they said, Chantel, we have somebody that we want you to meet. I don't remember if they said like, we know your husband, like we know the guy. And then as they're telling me this, Brian comes walking around the corner, and they turned to their kids and they said, don't say anything. And then Brian came and they're like, hey, Brian, this is Chantel. Chantel, this is Brian. And he was like rushing off to go do something at GYC. And so it was just like a super quick introduction, like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then he was off.
You left out the part where you fainted when you saw me, and then No, okay. That didn't happen. But like, I didn't know her, but I knew people that knew her. And so having people in your life that are making introductions, and if you're willing to make introductions, that's hugely important in building an unshakable social network. So, okay, thanks, honey. Appreciate that. Okay, let's continue on. We're gonna look at the experience of, hey, buddy. This guy got his RC car run over today. Yeah, so sad. He just got it like 3 days ago, and it was awesome. And then we watched the car just like, I heard it crunch and then looked over, and poor guy. But anyway, nice to see you. We're going to continue on with the experience of Saul and Barnabas just a little bit. Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul, who is also known as Paul. And when he found him, he brought him back to Antioch. Both of them stayed there with the church for a full year, teaching large crowds of people. It was at Antioch that the believers were first called Christians. So one of the things I want to take from this is that it's incredibly important to invite others into what God is doing. Right? I think that's one of the reasons why what you've got going on here with the young adult group is so successful, is because you've got a lot of people that are committed to asking people to participate and to get involved. Right? I met some people yesterday that were not Seventh-day Adventist believers, but they came here because someone that they knew invited them to come to camp meeting, invited someone that's not a Seventh-day Adventist to come to camp meeting, and then that person invited someone that's not a Seventh-day Adventist to come to camp meeting. And they actually met a group of people here that they really hit it off with and had a fantastic time. And it all came back to someone sending a text that said, hey, do you want to go to camp meeting? Right? It's really important to invite others into what God is doing. If there's a Bible study that you're involved in, it's great. Invite someone to participate into it. That might be the avenue for them to encounter the Lord, but also to develop a social connection. Barnabas did that for Saul, and so Saul or Paul spent a year preaching in that community, and they really strengthened the community of believers. Okay, the next little thing from Saul and Barnabas. After some time, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit each city where we previously preached the word of the Lord. They traveled around quite a bit preaching together. And so Paul says, let's go back and visit everyone, and let's see how the new believers are doing. And so Barnabas agreed and said that's a great idea, and he wanted to take along his nephew, a man named John Mark. The only problem is that John Mark had traveled with Paul and Barnabas before, and then in a time of need, John Mark actually deserted them, and he took off and left. So he ditched out on Paul and Barnabas. So then now later, Barnabas is saying, hey, we should take John Mark with us. And when Paul heard this, he disagreed with him strongly, since John Mark had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in their work. Hey, let's take John Mark. No, let's not. So the Bible says their disagreement was so sharp that they separated. Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed on for Cyprus. Paul chose Silas, and as he left, the believers entrusted him to the Lord's gracious care. Now, this is a really human story in the book of Acts, because you have these guys that are like Bert and Ernie. You know, they're like a team. They belong together. I don't know if you guys, any of you were like Sesame Street, you guys know who Bert and Ernie? Okay, a couple of you at least. So they were like Bert and Ernie, but then they have a point where they have a disagreement that's strong enough that they take a break from working together, and then Paul begins to work with Silas. Now, on some level, that's really tragic. It's really sad that they couldn't work through their disagreement. But I think another thing we can take away from this that's important is to recognize that some friendships, some relationships, this is not true with marriage, but this is true with friendships and social relationships. Some of those are only for a season. So just because you're close friends with someone now doesn't mean that you need to expect that that person is going to stay close friends with you for life, right? And sometimes if you expect that because you were best friends in kindergarten, you're going to be best friends through the rest of your life, what ends up happening is you put an unbearable amount of pressure on that relationship, and the other person can actually kind of be overwhelmed by that expectation, and then it can be too much pressure, and then it actually is destructive to the relationship. One of the things that I found to be true over the course of my life is that often God will bring people into my life and we'll have a really meaningful friendship, but often those are characters that appear in the chapter of your story just for a little bit here, maybe a couple years. You're going through a season of life together where you've got a lot in common, and then you're a real benefit to each other during that time. But sometimes, life happens, people move, someone, gets married and has kids, and so you're in different phases of life. And so sometimes that friendship begins to dwindle, and sometimes those characters reappear in the story later in a new way, and it's beautiful and amazing. But sometimes they don't. And so one of the things I would say about having unshakable relationships is don't put a bunch of expectation on others anticipating that just because you guys are friends today, that they have to keep in touch with you every day of the week once they move away, right? That just may not be a realistic expectation. Okay, now what I want to do for the rest of the time is just go through some relationship principles that I think are really, that they've been important to me. How about we'll just say it that way. One of the things that I recommend you do in your relationships is to initiate meaning. What do I mean by this? Honey, can I borrow you again? You're so helpful and so beautiful. This is just fun. Okay, and Judah, yeah, come along. So we have some friends, really good friends of ours, and they have a practice that we really appreciate about them. And one of Chantel's best friends is named Jackie. If you're watching on a live stream, hi, Jackie. And something they do that's really cool is affirmations. Why don't you tell them about it?
Something that they do with most of their good friends is when they're done, whenever we're saying goodbye after we've hung out for the afternoon or whatever, they say, okay, it's time for affirmations. And then their son, who's the same age as our 10-year-old, and both their son and them will come up with an affirmation. So Mathis will tell Jono something like, hey, you're really creative and I think you're a really good friend. And then he'll turn to me and he'll be like, hey, I think you're a really good mom. Sometimes it's more specific. Sometimes when the kids are younger, it's more general and it's harder for them to be specific. But, and then I affirm my friend Jackie and I'll tell her, hey, I think you're a really good listener. Thank you so much for investing in my kids. So it's always not the same thing, obviously. It's different affirmations according to maybe what happened that day or what you're appreciating. But they started doing that with us, and we love it. I try to do that with the boys before I tuck them in at night, too, is try to affirm them for something good that they did that day. And we try to do that practice with more people.
Thanks. So that's something that's really good and adds meaning to the relationship, and it kind of takes it to the next level now. It's not just a social thing, but you're actually actively expressing gratitude and appreciation to people. There's some people in this room that are really good at this. Actually, you see back there, Steve Hamilton is sitting on the couch. I'm stoked that you're going to have him as your speaker for the next couple days. He's been a huge mentor in my life. I can remember when I was about 17 years old that Steve got it in his head that when he said goodbye to me, he would say, "The Lord loves you. The Lord loves you." And sometimes I would kind of tease him about it a little bit. I was like, "Oh, did you read that in a book, or how'd you come up with that?" And he said to me, I still remember, this is like, again, I don't know where my car keys are. But he said to me, "I think sometimes people just need to hear that." And so he would say that to me. There was a season of my life where he would say, "The Lord loves you," and that sticks with me to this day. Steve is really good at initiating more meaning in relationships, at taking a pause to just affirm people. And many of you are in here. I've experienced that already. Really grateful for that and appreciate it. And the thing I would note with this also is that usually when you initiate meaning, it's going to be awkward at first, right? I have this ongoing joke. Any of you know Anil Kanda? Anil Kanda, I got in my head that I just wanted to start telling him I love you, to make him uncomfortable, but also to express to him that I love you. And so over the course of years, I've slowly worn him down to sometimes he'll actually respond to me now and say, I love you too. Yeah, isn't that great? So if you see Anil Kanda on campus, just tell him Brian Simmons loves you. Could you do that for me? But the thing about that is that when you're initiating meaning, it's going to feel awkward. So it's okay to make a little joke to ease the awkwardness, but to go ahead and do it because your friends are really going to appreciate it. One of the things we do as a family is that when we get together with another family, we like to pray together when we're done with our time together, and just to pray a blessing on the other family. This is a simple way to increase the depth of your relationships. Okay. This is also, man, I feel like, Steve, we could just talk about this a lot. This is something I didn't realize until relatively recently that I think is awesome. When I was in my early 20s, I felt this pressure to do things, like I felt like I needed to work. And I remember in particular, I had a friend that invited me to go on a trip, and I just felt like, I'm too busy for that. And so I didn't go on the trip. And I look back on that with regret, because what I found is that when you choose to carve out the time to add an experience to your life with someone else, like you say, hey, let's go to a book club together, let's go on a camping trip together, let's go on a road trip together, let's get into bird watching, little plug for bird watching there. Let's get into bird watching together, or into off-roading if that's more your thing, that's fine too. When you choose to do those things together and you create a memorable experience, like, hey, let's go on a mission trip together. When you create those memorable experiences, you've just added an experience to your life, but what's going to end up happening is the value of that experience over the course of time is going to accumulate, right? So having the experience isn't just that you spent the money and the time to do the thing, but you're actually investing. It's like buying into the S&P 500, right? You're making an investment in something that's going to accumulate in value over the course of time. And here's how it happens. When you do something with someone else that's memorable, over the course of your lifetime, that becomes a reference point that you refer back to and talk about. And then that story, every time it's told, enriches your life. And over the course of your lifetime, the value of those shared stories is huge. So this is why when you have children, it's really important to be with them on a regular basis, but it's really important to make special memories so that you can talk about those over the course of their lifetime. And those experiences, even though they were years in the past, the sharing of that memory continues to bind the relationship close together. When my oldest son was, Steve's really good at this also, by the way. I feel like this is just an infomercial for Steve, but that's okay, I love him. My oldest son, he really wanted to see bears when he was about 3 years old. So we took him to Yellowstone, and we prayed that we would see bears. And over the course of that trip, we saw 35 bears. But one of the experiences that stands out to us was that he was riding in the back seat of our car in his underwear because it was early in the morning. Like, we would get the kids up at like 4 in the morning before the sun came up, throw them in the car, and then go looking for bears because that's the best time to see them. Well, one of the animals that we hadn't seen yet that we really wanted to see was a moose. And so we saw this moose, and this 3-year-old kid got out of the car on the side of the road in Yellowstone, and I got out with him. And we were standing there watching, and have any of you ever seen a moose before in real life? Yeah, they're enormous. Like the back of a moose can be this tall. They are absolutely enormous. And they've got this, what do they call that, Sierra? What's that? I want to call it a waddle, but I don't think that's what it is. Like this dilly bopper that looks like, it looks like a giant, anyway. There's this big thing, that just hangs down from a moose, and it swings when they walk. And we're standing there, and the moose turns and starts walking our way, and my son in his underwear like just backpedals through me and jumps in the car. And when we tell that story even today, even though that was 7 years ago, that's a bonding memory that has increased in value over time. So I want to encourage you to add experiences, do things that are a little bit uncomfortable. And sometimes what you want to do is have an experience that's outside of your comfort zone, because that's the experience you're going to remember, right? It's hard to remember. Hey, remember that time we went on that glorious trip to Hawaii and nothing bad happened? It's like, that's not going to lodge in your memory as much as like, hey, remember that time we were looking at bears and you accidentally sprayed us with the bear spray and then it took 6 hours so that our fingers didn't taste like hot sauce? That happened. Right, those experiences are going to increase in value over time. Okay, real quick, something when we read the Gospels, we find that Jesus didn't interact with all people in the same way. So Jesus had different spheres that he interacted with. He had 12 disciples that were with him full time, but he also had 70 disciples that he interacted with regularly, but not at the same level. And then sometimes Jesus, out of the 12 disciples, would pick 3 to go off and he'd talk to them. Does anyone remember who those 3 were? James, John, and Peter. So he'd take Peter, James, and John, and he would interact with them. And then in the Gospels, there's one disciple that is called the Beloved. And that's right, it was John, and he was the youngest of the disciples, probably 16, something like that, when Jesus called him. And he interacted with Jesus the most out of the disciples. So Jesus, in his social interactions, had various spheres, and people were either closer to him or not as close to him, in part because of how receptive they were to him. And so one of the things I would say to you is to just recognize that you're going to have different spheres of relationship. So social scientists tell us that the average person can maintain social relationships with up to 150 people, right? So if you walk around a camp meeting, if you come here for years and years and years, eventually you'll be able to walk around and you could know by name 150 people and kind of check in with them year to year and keep up with them. This is an interesting thing because a lot of Adventist churches get to about 150 people and then they stop growing. And part of the reason why is because in order to get bigger, you have to have new structures to overcome the reality that you can only keep track of 150 people kind of in your mental framework. So then you've got to adjust in order to get bigger than that. But then in terms of actually having like meaningful relationships with people, about 10 to 15 is pretty normal that you can kind of keep in touch with semi-regularly. But in terms of like really close, deep relationships, you can usually only maintain 3 to 5 of those at a time. Right? So just recognize that not everyone is going to be your BFF. Right? Some relationships are going to be at a lighter level, and that's okay. But that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, a couple real quick things. In your social interactions, something my friend Benjamin Lundquist told me that I think is just golden is that when you're making friends and interacting with people, be more interested than you are interesting. So he's really good at this. When you talk with Benjamin Lundquist, he'll ask you questions, he'll check in on you, and he's not trying to impress you. He's not trying to show like, oh, I know all this stuff, I've been doing this stuff, but he's asking questions and investing in you, and he's a person that people love to interact with because he is more focused on being interested than he is on being interested. And then another word from him that has been tremendously valuable in my own interactions that I learned from him is when you ask people a question, hey, what do you do for a living? And they'll say, oh, I'm a rocket scientist. Often people will give you short answers, and if you just do some variation of, tell me more about that. What's that like? How is that for you? How did you get interested in that? Often you can follow up with people with those questions, and they'll begin to be more comfortable with you and open up and deepen the relationship there. Okay, I think that's about enough. We've talked about things. I hope some of these are helpful to you and that they enrich your own relationships. And I want to just have a prayer with you and then close out our time. Father, thank you so much for this incredible group of people, for all the talent that you've blessed them with and the way that they're using that to seek after you. Father, we pray for a blessing on each one here, that in their social relationships, in their dating relationships, that you'll bless them in their family relationships, that you'll bless them, that they'll experience new depth and enrichment, and that many people will be drawn to you as a result of that. So thank you. In Christ's name, amen.
Why don't we give a round of applause to Pastor Brian for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing. I recorded that part about Anil so that, yeah, we should just tell him that everyone was going to now tell him, I love you, from Pastor Brian. Thank you so much for everything that you have given and shared with us today and throughout this weekend. Actually, I was telling Steve that you totally plugged him in because he's going to be our next speaker. So you spoke so much about Steve. Pastor Steve, why don't you come up so that we can share a little bit about what you'll be sharing with us for the next couple of days. Let's give him a round of applause. This is Pastor Steve Hamilton, and he is now back in Central California Conference. Many of you guys know him, have seen him before. He's back, and we're super excited about that. He's going to be sharing for the next few evenings some very special messages. What is that about?
It's very cool, actually. I've been super blessed by Brian's stuff. And some of that's, we've had some of these conversations leading up to this. So one of the blessings, I think, of at least coming on the heels of Brian is that we've spent the summer together at Wawona chatting about things. And so I think you're going to feel as little bump in the road between speakers as possible, I think, other than presentation styles are obviously different and such. But we're going to move in and kind of shift gears tonight. Still the same direction, still the same trajectory, but maybe coming at it a little bit as the old man. I appreciate the leadership of Young Adult Tent letting me come hang out with you this week. I told someone just yesterday, I think, I said, these days when I'm in the Young Adult Tent, I make sure I'm sitting next to my wife because like I'm the creeper age that we used to be like, no, this is young adult. Like you guys, like go find a wife your own age. So just being able to hang out with you has been really, really sweet. And thank you, Kendra, for the invite. What I'm hoping will happen in the next 3 nights will sort of front load you for the middle age of sustainability in your Christian walk and ministry. Dylan and I went down to Gale's, which is a pastry shop down in Capitola, and we hung out there when we were dating. And the fire in our bones for ministry and doing it together and serving God had so much energy. I almost said effort, and it was effort. But there was so much just initiative in those beginning years of our lives that I think to some extent we coasted on that for a bunch of years. These days, at 50 years old, I know that what launched me in my relationship with Christ and in ministry and in our marriage, all of those things, none of that inertia was enough to coast through into the long haul. So I think when I say we're going to shift gears a little bit, it's going to be a little bit less of unshakable and a bit more of into how do I develop sustainability in my journey. So that, because I think there's an awareness in me that knows the trying harder would have or did wear out quite a few years ago. So to still be in it in a way that's sustainable is hopefully a gift that I'm able to give to you and your thinking the next 3 nights. So we're actually going to highlight a ministry model tonight out of Matthew and Jesus and tax collectors, to where I hope that we come out of it tonight saying, man, witnessing is clearly not something I do, it's something I am. Jesus said, you will be my witnesses. And when witnessing is something I am rather than something I do, then it's just something I can't help but do the rest of my life. Because the effort to be a witness, that chutzpah, if you will, wore out a bunch of years ago for me. So, but I'm hooked on it for life. So does that give a little bit of a framework? So that's where we're going to shift gears and roll into sustainability the next 3 nights. And I'm really, really just blessed, stoked that I get to do it with you guys. So tell Kendra thank you for letting me be here. That's what I would appreciate.
So we'll hope you'll join us tonight. That's not it for today. We do have a bouldering activity that's going to be taking place. We're going to be meeting here at around 11:45. Can someone tell me what time it is, actually? It is 11:45. All right, we're going to be meeting back here at 12:05. For those of you that are wanting to go and join, there is a QR code on the screen. That link tree has all the things that you'll ever want for the rest of camp meeting to know about, to sign up for. It is going to have the sign up. We do have our very special beach night that is going to be coming up on Thursday evening at Monterey Bay Academy. Now, here's the thing. If you want to go, and it is a highlight for all of camp meeting, if you want to go, you do need to sign up because you're going to be checking your name at the entrance at MBA in order for you to be able to join. So there is going to be a limited amount of cars, so we are going to ask to carpool. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are wanting to get to know someone, you will have a 20 to 30 minute drive to the beach. It's a good time to say, hey, do you have a ride? Why don't you come and join me and my friends to go to the beach together? Just helping you out. Anyways, so if you are interested in joining bouldering, please sign up. Use that Linktree code to sign up right now so that we can have an easy access to go. There are limited spots available for bouldering, so it is kind of first come, first serve, but there should be enough spaces. If you guys want to go, the staff that are going to be leading out this activity, Pastor Kurt, if you could please come to the front, actually, so you guys can know Pastor Kurt is lead for our social teams and all social things, so he pours his heart into this, and we're just excited. Who's also going to be going with him, and you guys can connect with as well, is DJ and Robert back there. They're waving at you. So yes, thank you guys so much for joining. They'll be able to help you guys get situated as well. So we'll be meeting here, right up at the tables at 12:05. Anything that they need to bring, wear, or...
Yeah, so make sure to bring some active wear because you're going to be sweating a lot. And also the fee is $20 per person. So make sure to bring that. And then any waivers that need to be filled out will be filled out at Agility Boulders today. So.
All right, well, thank you so much. 12:05. Again, a few of us have gone every year, and it's really fun. If you've never done it, it's really worth a try. It's also really cool to just people watch. I like to people watch. So if you guys are interested in going, please sign up, and we will be meeting back here at 6:30 p.m. for our evening program. Pastor Steve will be the one sharing the message tonight. Other than that, you guys are dismissed. Thank you for